And welcome to another episode of Football the Pod. I'm your host, Commissioner Ben. All right, welcome to Football the Pod, Season 4, Episode 17. And that's right, the season is over. And the champ has been declared. It has been 5 long years that I've been waiting for this moment. And finally, I'm back in my rightful position. I can go on for hours, of course. It feels great, but I won't do that. Let's just get right into our championship week and 2025 fantasy season review. Before we do that, it is time for one final Just the Tip with Commissioner Ben. All right, today's tip is about off-season engagement, and I say this in one way or another every year. Our season has ended, but the fun can continue. Let's keep the WhatsApp chat active. Post your favorite football gifs, whatever you do, doesn't matter. Stay on top of NFL players as well, on top of their injuries, the draft picks that teams make, and all that fun so that you can come back even stronger for the 2026 season. And on that note, I've gotten more into best ball drafting. I've talked a little bit about it over the past year, the format where you draft your team and then you're done for the year. And I'll be using my YouTube channel to post a couple of best ball video drafts over the summer. So check that out in the off season as well, starting around probably about May, just after the NFL draft. And then you can already start learning about the players who you'll want on your team. And that was just the tip with Commissioner Ben. All right, and finally, as has become tradition for the year-end pod, we welcome the champ, or if the champ happens to be the host, then we need to have the other finalist on. So without further ado, let's welcome our well-deserved second place finisher, Sarah, back onto the pod. Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm really good. I had a great season. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And I got to play in the finals with you. So that was a really fun time, even though we'll discuss it later, didn't do so well, but was happy to be there.
You were there. That's what matters. A huge improvement. I'll talk about that as well. I already don't even need to ask. Tell us a little bit about how your season went, because you already jumped right into that. So that means we can get right into our week in review to begin. And I will remind you that the League Poopy Football Award went to Cassie this year for her last place finish. Go handsomer, boys. All right, that will stay on throughout the year until somebody reclaims the week. We're at 1 crown next week. And our top score on the week for the second week in a row, and really many times this season, goes to Sean, who saved it all for week 16 and 17, forgetting that he had to win in the quarterfinals first. Maybe next year. All right, that is our quick top scores. And to finish off our playoff review segment that we've been doing each week, let's actually see who helped everyone win their championships, or who, well, may have crushed you this week, depending on which side you are on. So to get things started off, the final segment of Playoff Hotties, these are some of the players who you needed to win your championship week, or at least figure out who was actually going to take home the championships, as we look at the Who's Hot list again from Yahoo that I'm screen sharing here, and started off with somebody who had an incredibly strong playoff run, including the absolute week-winning championship hero, if you somehow managed to survive and get into the playoffs with him on your roster, and that would be Derrick Henry, who had 4 touchdowns, 216 rushing yards for 45 points on Cassie's last place team. So it did not matter. Obviously, Derrick Henry was not all that much help during the regular season, or at least he had some real down weeks. But then if you somehow managed to get in the playoffs, he was who you needed, as well as Brock Purdy, who was injured for most of the year, but then came out destroying in the playoffs, helped Scott take home, well, the toilet bowl, but he was also already out of the playoffs. So finally, we get someone who really helped a playoff team, and that would be Drake May, the probable favorite to win actual NFL MVP. Scored 42 points this week, just like Brock Purdy. Those were the top three scorers. Then Bijan Robinson, who's been destroying for Sean in the playoffs. Too bad he lost in the quarterfinals, like I said. Alongside Ramondre Stevenson, who's had a great playoff run down there at about the 10th best score. And look at some of these names who are like this playoff week was, I mean, really the whole playoffs, but especially championship week. I mean, this guy's taking it home. The top quarterback was Brock Purdy. The second or the third best quarterback was Malik Willis. I mean, the second best running back, or the third best running back, I should say, Chase Brown. That we'll get to him later in CMC. No surprise there. But the number one wide receiver on the week, Luther Burden, with only 27 points. I mean, just an odd finals, absolutely odd in terms of wide receiver scores. Our next best wide receiver at 25 points was Chris Olave. I mean, had an incredible season, but maybe not who you expected. Looking at the running back again, Zach Charbonnet up there at 26 points. So our top teams were not getting these players other than who I talked about already with Eddie, and I keep scrolling down. There's finally our number 3 wide receiver, Jamar Chase, who did help us through. So just a weird week in terms of who is going to give you those big scores. If you were playing a big tournament like basketball, for example, you absolutely needed Derrick Henry to take home the championship. All right, let's just to give you an idea of how we got here. But now I will remind you how it all went down in terms of who finished real quick. In our 11 versus 12 matchup, Aaron just decides to continue just playing Lamar Jackson, even though he's out, losing in the abysmal 62-73 matchup against Brent for 11 versus 12. In the 7 versus 8 matchup, Daniel beat Christine 98-88. And in the 5v6 matchup, Sean destroyed with that massive score, 168 points against Brandon's 120. That brings us to the Toilet Bowl finals. And well, this one was not so exciting. Basically, this came down to Scott having Brock Purdy, giving him 120 points, and Jason's 97 points was not close, meaning Scott takes down the Toilet Bowl. Congratulations, Scott. Hey, if just like I did about a year ago, so maybe that'll lead you to the championship next year. And let's move on to our bronze medal match, where we actually will look at what happened. And Nick did manage to, well, fall flat. Once again, falling to Eddie. 110-166. That you already saw that huge score from Drake May with 42 points. Sarah, tell us a little bit what happened in this bronze medal match.
Yeah, I don't think that Nick pleaded with Jahmyr Gibbs enough. I don't know if he didn't say please nice enough or didn't ask enough, but Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't in his favor this week, that's for sure. Just with a measly 6.4 points on the week. And Eddie just completely dominated. He had a much better team, to be honest. I mean, like, let's look at quarterback for a second. Like Drake May compared to Baker Mayfield, Drake May had more than twice the number of points than Baker. Likely going to win the MVP, like you said. So that in itself was pretty telling of how this matchup was going to go. But Eddie also had a few more notable players than Nick did. Who else did well on Eddie's? I mean, having CMC for the season, I think I read a stat somewhere where it was like 21% of fantasy managers who had CMC won their fantasy championship. And while that was not Eddie for our league, he certainly did very well. And yeah, go ahead.
I mean, CMC, the final 2 weeks, 32 and then 28 points. That's exactly what you need. His second worst week on the year was the quarterfinals, which was what allowed me to beat him. And those only 15 points. He had 1 week with 9 points. Every other week, he is at least 17 points. I mean, just absolutely crazy. He finishes as the running back 1 overall in fantasy. He was absolutely the player you needed. And Nick just did not have anybody like that. on Jahmyr Gibbs' side, Jahmyr Gibbs just completely fell flat in the playoffs, and that was who Eddie needed to somehow compete with CMC in order to try and win. I mean, other than that, it's the bomb score of Drake May getting that 42-point score at whatever position. Then you're going to need more than 0 points from Marvin Harrison Jr., who that was a great trade from Nick. I think after he traded for him, he went out and got Nick a total of 15 points across all the weeks that he had traded for him. Actually, and I think he traded for him when he was on IR even. Yeah, right before our trade deadline. So, yeah, just, I guess, a big swing and a miss there. Who knows what's going to happen with Marvin Harrison's career?
Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. And so I didn't tell Nick, but I anticipated him to be pretty bad this year too.
Well, next time you should let him know. He didn't even start Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I don't know what was going on there. That was absolutely an easy start when Chris Rodriguez was declared out again about a day before that actual game. He was going to start, then he was sick. They declared him out a day before, so there was ample time to start him after his game where he was the starter last week. That would be JCM. This was the actual 2 weeks where you could have played Bill. That would have been a better start than, well, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. Definitely should have started him over Marvin Harrison Jr., even Deebo Samuel. I mean, not that it would have helped, but yeah, just poor decisions closing out Nick's season. And really, Nick could not recover after losing Devonta Adams on IR. And on the other hand, Eddie lost Rashee Rice. I mean, that turned out to be not so great. Stephon Diggs, Eddie never played him on one of his big weeks, but he had the true top wide receiver, perhaps in the league, Michael Wilson, who really carried Eddie's end of the year, just not quite enough to get to the finals. Congratulations, Eddie, on your third place finish. And Nick, well, yeah, I guess maybe better luck next year. Okay, moving on to the finals, the actual championship game, the 1v2 matchup. Let's go over to the end of the championship bracket on Yahoo. And you know what? I will say, this 120 to 97 point victory, this was an near identical final score to the Toilet Bowl finals. I don't know what that says for our finals. I agree. Disappointing total points scored here, but I showed you all the top players, and it was a pretty wacky finals. Sarah, what do you have to say about our matchup?
Well, I wrote in my notes that I should start with congratulating you.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
since I haven't really done that, I think I sent you a text after I lost saying good game. And that was kind of the extent of our interaction. You said, better luck next year. And I was like, all right. Uh, well, I'll start with myself, since I can speak to my team the best. Terrible last game. Everyone, terrible. Just, I don't know what all of my players were doing, what was on their mind, maybe some personal issues, I don't know. But all had a terrible game, except for my defense, which was my highest score with 18 points, which is pretty pathetic all around.
Yeah, it's never a good sign when your top scoring player is a defense.
Yeah. And I decided to play Taysom Hill because I saw that he was ranked very highly in by multiple fantasy analysts, including Justin Boone, who I had sworn off after trusting him too blindly the last couple of years. And I knew that he was, the ultimate boomer bust player, and he was exactly that, a complete bust with 0 points for the week. So that's my own fault, taking the risk on him.
I mean, your other play was going to be Mike Gesicki, I assume, on your bench here.
Yes.
So that would have gotten you an extra 6.7 points, but would have not been the difference.
And I should have trusted my gut and played Parker Washington. I had a feeling he was going to have a good game, and he had a much better game than any of my other wide receivers. And he's just sitting on my bench, but it's all good, Did my best, and I just couldn't compete with your more so all-star lineup. Specifically your running back power. Um, Chase Brown had an amazing game, as did Jamar Chase, and they kind of really drove it home for you.
The chases led me to
The,
victory. Yep. The,
yeah,
my Bengals pulled through in the second half of the season and led me to a championship. Absolutely. Bucky
and Nick,
Irving did nothing. So, I mean, since I traded for him from Aaron, he did not help me out at all. He had, I guess, two 16-point games, and then just in the fantasy playoffs, 8.7 points, 8 points. So that was a complete bust. But
yeah, and it doesn't look like your precious Kyle Pitts did anything for you this week, but you didn't need him to.
no, I did not need Kyle Pitts at all in that final week. Luckily, since, yeah, my little combo of Kyle Pitts and Drake London combined for 5 points, but it didn't even matter in the end. I managed to get another Juwan Jennings touchdown. Juwan Jennings getting touchdowns after I finally started playing him. He had touchdowns in 5 straight weeks, and 1 week off, and then 2 touchdowns each games before that. So that turned out to be a great value pick as well. And you know what? That is the consistency. Luckily, I just had players on my roster who could consistently get big points even when the rest of my team let me down. And that was what led me to the championship. I would have been real upset if I lost because of playing Justin Herbert over Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck ended up having about 10 points more than Herbert, but I couldn't give up on my guys. I had to have them all win or lose the championship with me. Most of my original team this year after trading my entire roster last year. That is why I ended up adding back Quentin Johnson and Emeka Egbuka just so they could see the victory from the bench. Had to have everybody on the squad who helped me here throughout the year.
That's so
And
nice of
yes,
you.
yeah, and we earned it as a team. They'll take home the victory as a team, and the trophy is mine. Get to hold on to that until next year, and that's it. That brings us to our final standings. However, I will say congratulations as well to you for your second place finish. And, well, I can jump right into that because the final standings have, of course, myself in first place, moving from ninth after winning the draft into first place, taking Jamar Chase first overall, leading me to, well, helping me win the championship. And then Sarah in second place, by far our most improved team, moving from 13th place last year to second this year.
That's
What
right.
a change. It's pretty difficult to have a bigger jump than that. Let's see if, I don't know, Cassidy can beat it next year by going from 14th to first, but 13th to 12th to second is incredibly impressive. So very nicely done. In third place, Eddie, back in the money after a 2-year hiatus and a fifth place finish last year. Nick in fourth, still a big improvement after back-to-back 11th place finishes. He goes from 11th to fourth, but yeah, still outside of the money, so I can't really take much solace in that. And Sean, fifth place after 3 years in a row, finishing last or second last. That is a big improvement as well, but still sitting outside of the money. Brandon finishing in sixth, who's consistently a playoff contender, but has yet to pull it all together. We'll see what happens next year. Daniel in seventh, who after an abysmal winless season one, in his next 4 seasons in the league, has been in the top 8 every time, but he is still yet to crack the money. Eighth place, we had Christine, who's back in the playoffs after a 12th place finish, but yet to make it in the money still. After 9 years in the league and never making any top 3 finish, that is. Ninth place, we had Scott, who peaked 2 years ago with his league championship and has now fallen from first to seventh to ninth, but maybe the first pick in the draft will help him out. And in 10th place, Jason, who's back on the outside of the playoffs looking in, and is our only league mate to never crack the top 4 in all of his years in the league. So maybe he can get a top 4 finish next year. I don't know. We'll see if second place in the draft helps him out. In 11th place, we had Brent, who's 3 years in a row on the outside looking in, that is for the playoffs, after back-to-back third place finishes to start his career. So maybe he can get back into the playoffs next year. And then Aaron, who is our biggest faller, going from first place, our league champ last year, to 12th, who is tied with our biggest faller, I should say, with our 13th place finisher, Mike, who also fell 11 spots from second to 13th. So, well, hopefully this same fate is not destined for us next year, Sarah. First and second did not prove to be a boon for the next year finish. And then, as we know, 14th place was Cassie, who I will say this is her first year outside of the playoffs. But I guess when you fall hard. Which brings us to the draft of the draft order, rattling it through, I should say, from 1st to 14th in the draft of the draft. Scott, Jason, Brent, Aaron, Mike, Cassie, Sean, Brandon, Daniel, Christine, Nick, Eddie, Sarah, and me, who will pick last in the draft of the draft, thanks to my first place finish. Which brings us to our end of season awards. Who or how should we give out, well, what mattered most for the year? And that will start off with a screen share as I continue to still screen share the old screen to look at who mattered the most in terms of the players. Who did you really want on your roster to help win championships? The top scores at each position, which I'm screen sharing now in terms of the average fantasy points for. And overall, as is normally the case, our top finishers are quarterbacks. The top 3 finishers overall, all quarterbacks. That would be Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, and Drake May. All of them helped you win big. Josh Allen be the top scoring quarterback, a whole point above Matt Stafford in second. But actually, he wasn't all that consistent, especially in the fantasy playoffs. He really let you down. The top scoring non-quarterback was Christian McCaffrey, averaging 24 points a week, which is absolutely crazy. And then the top scoring wide receiver, we look a couple slots down, Puka Nacua, averaging over 23 points a week. So huge scores. We can quickly look through, again, the players that really mattered at quarterback were, it's sort of all over the place because they weren't that consistent. Josh Allen with 26, Matt Stafford 25, Drake May 24, Brock Purdy 23. Now we're already getting down into just sort of inconsistent weekly starts that you could find from the waiver wire. Let's look at wide receiver here. The absolute top player was Puka Nacua at 23 points a game. 2 points behind is Jackson Smith and Jigma. Again, an incredible player this year, 21 points. And then my player, the first overall pick, Jamar Chase with 19 points. And then getting into, well, some perhaps most surprising player here, George Pickens at 5th overall, 18 points a week. At running back, our top player by far was Christian McCaffrey, a whole point and a half a game ahead of Bijan Robinson, who's another incredible first-round pick with 22 points a game. Also at 22, Jonathan Taylor. However, he really had a dominant early season and then fell off come playoff time, just like Jahmyr Gibbs at 21 points a game. And Devon Achane had a super underrated year, just incredibly consistent 20 points a game, helping you throughout the year. At tight end, it was basically Trey McBride and nobody. All averaging almost 19 points a game at tight end, Trey McBride, which is equivalent at wide receiver, 18.94 points. That is better than Amon-Ra St. Brown. He would have been the wide receiver 4 overall in the season if he was a wide receiver. So absolutely amazing. In fact, one of the best tight end seasons of all time. Number 2, 4 points a game lower than that was Tucker Kraft, who was lost to injury halfway through the season. He was on the way to a career year. And Brock Bowers, who was big up and down as well. George Kittle rounding out the 14-point per game average. And then after that, we're looking at basically the equivalent of waiver wire ads. We had Kyle Pitts on my team, who was a drop by Nick. That just goes to show you how much the tight end position really mattered. It was the top guys or nothing. All right, I guess I'll show kicker. Turns out the top kicker was Kaimi Fairbairn. Yeah, I know, surprising. Then Jason Myers, my kicker. Brandon Aubrey, the top kicking pick, was actually 4th, although Spencer Schrader only played a couple games. And at defense, look at these defense scores. The average fantasy points per game for defenses were, the actual top 2 NFL defenses, the Seattle Seahawks, 11 fantasy points a game, and then Houston Texans averaging 10 fantasy points a game. But then everybody else, now it's just, 8 points, 8 points, 8 points, 7 points, 7 points. So defense is really pretty flat. You really got to play your matchups each week on defense. All right, let's move on to the other awards. Starting off, Sarah, with our hottest team. Who wins the hottest team award? You're giving this one out this year.
Yes, well, this is all, subjective. But
this is not subjective. You have the correct answer.
I have the correct answer. Okay, well, I think that Daniel's Dandy team has the hottest team because I have a really big crush on the sun god, I will say. He's physically very attractive, and he speaks 3 languages, which is French, English, and German, which is really impressive. And he's got a really good relationship with his mom. So I really like that based on watching the football documentary.
You mean the receiver show? Receiver?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. He also had Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, it's like, he's also pretty attractive. Um, and
Hi.
I
All right.
he's okay. He's okay. He's not, you know, he's okay. And then I think DJ Moore has a nice smile. So
Teacher, he's not even smiling with his mouth open. It's not
he's
even.
not
It's not even
smiling there. I looked up photos of him and he's got a nice smile.
all right, all right. Well, I wouldn't be able to tell that from his photo here, but there we have it. Daniel's team wins something this year, and that is the hottest team award. You know it is a rough year when the handsomer boys cannot even win the hottest team award. All right, let's move on to the second award, the I Ain't Scared of You award, the team who you wanted to play against each week. Sarah, who wins this award?
I'm giving this award to Mike. Uh, Despite some valiant efforts towards the end of the season, um, he tried so hard. He made so many moves this season. And everyone always makes fun of me for making lots of moves, adding and dropping players. But Mike made like 66 moves this year. And despite all that work and all those trade offers, he still couldn't pull it together. And so to me, he's not very scary.
Wow, ouch. All right, hope you hear that, Mike. Hope that motivates you for next year. There you go. Mike wins the I Ain't Scared of You award. And then let's switch it around, giving out the Fear Boners award for scariest team to play against. Sarah, who wins this one?
Um, this one was a bit tougher. There are a few scary teams. Um, your team was kind of scary, but not the scariest. I would say Eddie. Eddie had a really dominant team. Um, and as we all know, CMC having CMC on your roster, you got to be scared because he's just had such a consistent high level playing year. Um, and Eddie has really good foresight too. So, he's not thinking about just this week or next week. He's thinking about like 3 or 4 weeks ahead. And so he's picking up all these players. And then when he plays them, you see, oh, yeah, that's why Eddie played them, because he knew that they were going to be good. Or he kind of could see that this person was sort of injured or whatever. And so Eddie's scary like that. Kind of plays
All right.
mind games on you,
Wow, mind
with you.
games. Huh?
Yeah.
Don't talk about mind games with me and Eddie. All right. I think that's a well-deserved award. There you go, Eddie. Fear Boners Award for scariest team to play against. Let's move on to the most consequential trade award of this year. Sarah, who do you give this one out to? The most consequential trade, as I bring up all of the transactions that happened this year.
Well, yeah, it would be good to know what the trades were. So I picked a trade that I made because one, I was really proud of myself for finally making a trade. Because after the first few years, I was really scared to trade away my players. But then this year, I was like, you know what? You're gonna do it. You're gonna face your fears. And so the trade that I made with Mike, I gave him Zach Charbonnet, Aaron Jones Sr. There may have been a third one, but I can't remember who the third one was.
No, there wasn't.
No,
That trade is right here.
okay, good. And I got back Rico Dowdle and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, I will say, he had like 1 or 2 good games on my team, but not great. Rico Dowdle, I would not have been able to win a few games without him. The second I got him, he was explosive. He didn't have the best end of season, but especially when Chuba Hubbard was injured, he did great. As you can see here, over 30 points.
Yep,
for
you got him for those
his
that
games.
middle of the season run where he
Yeah.
had a couple 30-point games and 28-point game, a couple 15-pointers. Yeah, the middle of the season, he was really who carried you through the middle of the season. I agree. You could have even picked your other trade that you made late in the year, getting Jamison Williams for Jackson Dart. Jamison
Oh,
Williams definitely carried you into the playoffs, I would
he
say, in
did.
that final.
Forgot about
So
that one.
you made two very consequential trades. Hopefully, you're right. This gets you back in the trade market next year.
Thank you.
Excellent choices. For me, I will say that the most consequential trade was trade number one of the year, where I sent Travion Henderson, Cortland Sutton, and Michael Pittman to Mike in exchange for Drake London, Chase Brown, and Blake Corum.
Mm.
And, well, Cortland Sutton and Michael Pittman, they had great above expectation years. And Travion Henderson was doing very poorly. He had a really good end of year, but getting Chase Brown was what really changed my whole season, sticking with him as he started to get better right around this week 4 point in the season. In fact, a few weeks later. So that is my most consequential trade of the year, which moves us to the award for most trades in the season. And as you can see here, the Kittle Titty Committee keeps on popping up, and that was because we already know the winner here. That would be Mike, smashing the record with most trades in a season with 8. Let's see if that is somehow possible to keep up next year, or if maybe Mike focuses slightly more on winning as opposed to trading. All right, moving on to the most hilarious waiver wire ad this year. Sarah, who wins this award for you?
I have two. I have two in mind. So one was pretty recent by Eddie when he decided to add Brandon Ayuk for like no reason. Uh, and then the other notable waiver wire ad was Aaron spending 40 fab on Rashad Bateman.
Yep. I mean, that was I'm sure he thought everybody was going to be loading up the money to get Rashad Bateman. I don't even know when that Rashad Bateman ad is. Let's find out. Aaron adding Rashad. Yeah, that was back around the time when Zay Flowers, I think, was hurt, and then he for some reason thought that everybody was going to be going after you. We got to go. This was like
It was
early
a
in the
while
season,
ago.
back on September 24th with that $40 waiver wire ad. And after picking him up that week, it's because he had just had scored 17 points, and after that week, he did not come close to even. He didn't even hit 10 points. He got 3 points the next week, then 0, then 1. Yeah, definitely worth $40, and yeah, showed that Aaron was not making the smartest decisions this year. On my end, the $15 Tutu Atwell ad by Brandon on October 8th was just an excellent ad. I'm sure Brandon knew everybody was going to be going for him, as he had been running around all over the field, just doing wind sprints, not really getting targeted at all. Continued to not get targeted after he was picked up by Brandon, and then went on the IR for basically the rest of the season. Don't know what was going through his mind, other than probably premonitioning this award. Which moves us to the Too Much Screen Time Award for most total transactions. And this is also Mike, whose 63 transactions was 2 more than Eddie's, and they were the only teams to break 50. And I'm sure the same enthusiasm will pay off next year. All right, moving on, sticking with the waiver trend, the waiver wire MVP. Sarah, who is the player who's added off the waiver wire who mattered the most this year?
So I'm giving this award to myself
No,
for
this is a
picking up.
player award.
Yes, I know. Okay, but Matthew Stafford, I picked him up on the waiver wire at like week 4, 5,
On
and
October 2nd, in fact.
yes, second best quarterback in the league.
Yep. I
That's
absolutely.
all. I don't need to say more.
Nope.
He was a great pickup.
A
And
$2
he,
waiver
yeah,
wire ad on October 2nd, and he would go on to finish as the quarterback too. Absolutely. He's my award winner as well. He definitely changed your season. Excellent. Absolutely the waiver wire MVP, which moves us to the best draft pick as I bring up one more time our league draft board. Who was the best draft pick by whatever definition you'd like this year, Sarah?
Okay, so I'll start with James Cook by Jason. I think that was a really good pick. Jason obviously didn't have the best season, but James Cook was very consistent, and he got him like he. Everyone just kept passing up on him, and then Jason picked him up, and he was a good pickup.
Yep, the RB6 overall, and he was taken as what, I don't know, the RB15 or something like that in the third round. Absolutely, definitely a great pick.
Yeah, and my other pick was Rashi Rice by Eddie, just holding him on his IR, and then when he was finally playable, he was really good. Um, not something I would have done, but Eddie, with that foresight I was talking about earlier, he knew.
He did. He did have to wait through those first 6 weeks of the season with him sitting on the bench with no points. But yeah, it definitely paid off for Eddie, helping him dominate the middle of the year. I like those picks. I will give my pick to Jackson Smith and Jigba by Sean,
Mm.
picking him up at the 211 slot in round two. The wide receiver 12 off the board, but the number 2 overall wide receiver finish. Absolutely a great pick. He was worthy of a first round pick. So huge value there, which moves us to the biggest bust, the worst draft pick this year, Sarah.
Aaron picking up Lamar Jackson is the what is it QB
Wow. Yep.
one? I don't know.
QB1 with the first quarterback drafted off the board in the fourth round. Great pick. I love that. Everyone knew it was happening. It was just a guarantee that Aaron was going to take Lamar Jackson. I'm surprised he didn't take him in his 1-2 turn pick. But Lamar Jackson, I mean, he ended up just being riddled by injuries. Really, that's what killed his year. He did start off real well, but then when Lamar Jackson was doing bad, Aaron started doing bad and never recovered. He would have been much happier with Josh Allen. If Aaron had taken Josh Allen there, I think his season would have been a lot different. I'm going to take a first round pick. I think it's unfair to count injuries here. So the biggest bust is very clearly Justin Jefferson, the first pick by Jason, taken at the 107 slot, the wide receiver 3 off the board, and finishing as the wide receiver 36 overall. He did average 11 points a game, but it was all over the place after a couple okay weeks and then many just, 4 for 40 weeks. I mean, when you don't have a proper quarterback passing the ball, that's what's going to happen. But I mean, not at all what you're looking for in your first round pick. He finished just slightly ahead of Troy Franklin, and to give you some context for comparison there. All right, which takes us to our final award, our fantasy MVP this year. Sarah, who's the fantasy MVP?
CMC.
All right, yep. Christian McCaffrey, you can't go wrong with the CMC pick, finishing as the top non-quarterback on the year, just points per game ahead of all other non-quarterback players. Great pick. But he was a first rounder, and he was not on a championship team. And so for me, I have to go with a player from the championship team, as in my
Okay.
team. And so for my fantasy MVP, I'll be taking our Canadian boy, Chase Brown, who from week 8 onwards did not have a game below 15 points and had 32 and then 29 in the semifinals and finals, finishing as the running back 7 overall in points per game down here and leading me to a championship. So he is my
Surprised.
fantasy MVP.
I'm surprised you didn't give it to your kicker.
My kicker, my kicker was averaging 12 points a game. So decent, but he did let me down in really in the finals and semifinals. It was only the quarterfinal. I guess, he could, if we were talking about quarterfinals MVP, then sure. I mean, okay, he did have a great run. That is true. That is true. But kickers, we're not even drafting kickers. Well, at least I'm not even drafting kickers. They get added from the waiver wire. So, but you know what? I'll take it as an honorable mention, which moves us to the biggest lesson learned this year. Sarah, what is your biggest fantasy takeaway from your third year here in the league?
Okay, so I wrote down 3 takeaways from this year. First, I already mentioned, don't be afraid to make trades. I definitely want to be more aggressive in subsequent years with trading. It got me quite far, as you mentioned. I completely forgot about Jamison Williams, but that was a great trade in getting Rico Dowdle. Um, so again, to start, changing my mindset moving forward with fantasy. My other lessons learned is this is just more of a personal thing to be a bit more selective with the fab because by the end of the season, I had basically nothing, and so I could not make any sort of real competitive moves. Um, and so just, be a bit more mindful with that. And then my third word of advice is don't draft rookies. I'm done with the rookies. You can pick them up in their second or third season, first season, just see how they go. They're never going to be as good as the analysts say.
That's what you said last year. That was a big takeaway for you last year. So I don't know. I don't know what rookies you drafted, but clearly you didn't stick with it this year. I mean, what rookie were you did you actually end up taking this year? I don't know. I don't know no rookies in your
Bill?
top. Yeah, Bill Jakrowski Merritt, JCM in pick 8. I think that was too much studying of Eddie's mock draft that made you take him. But other than that, he was your only. Okay, I mean, then by the 12th round, you're just taking like sort of random upside guys. So all right.
What can I say? I admire Eddie.
I never believed the Bill hype. The Bill hype only came through in basically the fantasy championship on Nick's bench. So, yeah. Otherwise, great picks. And in fact, on that waiver wire note, everybody could use the waiver wire more. You use the waiver wire reasonably well, expecting people to actually make bids. But if we look at our overall waiver budgets in the end, you had $1 left, Eddie had $1 left, I had 19, and Mike had 13. Everybody else had more than $20. We had a bunch of people we had 3 players with at least $100 left. And that's because you remember we get that bonus money if you finish last. Everybody needs to be more aggressive on the waiver wire, spending that money to pick up players who can make a big difference, especially early on in the year. That's my bonus tip for the year, my bonus lesson learned. My lesson learned will be, well, if we just take a look at the top teams here, the quarterbacks and the tight ends on each of our top 4 teams. I'll start with Eddie because I'm looking at him. Drake May was drafted. Where was Drake May drafted? Let's see. Where is Eddie here? Drake May is all the way down in the 11th round. This is like what, the 12th quarterback off the board or something like that. And a tight end, Eddie's got Aronde Gadsden, who was a waiver wire addition. Let's just go look at Nick's team. Nick at quarterback, Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones, late round quarterback picks. Juwan Johnson, a late round tight end pick. Let's go now to Sarah's squad. Well, we already talked about it. I don't even need to go to Sarah's squad. Sarah was playing the tight end waiver wire game, and her quarterback was waiver wire addition Matt Stafford, and also she had Jackson Dart through the year. 2 excellent fantasy quarterbacks who you could get off the waiver wire. And on my squad, I had Justin Herbert as my quarterback all year round. He was the last pick in my draft, and at tight end, well, now I'm playing a waiver wire tight end in Kyle Pitts. So my lesson learned is all of these quarterbacks and tight ends were late round picks or waiver wire ads. So it is not worth it spending your early picks in the draft on quarterbacks and tight ends. That's what I'm going to try and remember for next year. You can give or take that strategy. Which brings us to the way too early top 3 at each position for next year. Sarah, do you have a top player at each position next year? Start off with wide receiver.
I do, but don't understand why I wrote down one of them now. Okay, anyways, a wide receiver, I wrote down JSN.
All right, Jackson Smith and Jigba. If we look at our top finishers, my top 3 wide receivers for next year in order are actually in order of how they finished this year. I would take Puka, JSN, and Jamar Chase as top 3 wide receivers for next year in this way too early segment. How about at running back, Sarah?
Bijan Robinson, I think, is gonna do great again next year.
Bijan Robinson, the number 2 running back this year. And my number 1 pick right now for running back for next year, I agree. He should be maybe the number 1 overall pick next year if we had to draft right now. And I also have in order CMC. He's going to keep on catching the ball, so I think he's still going to be up there next year. Stayed healthy all year. And Jahmyr Gibbs, got to give him another chance. He's going to continue getting more and more explosive on Detroit. So those are my top three at the running back position. How about at tight end?
I don't know. For some reason, I wrote down Tyler Warren. So when I looked at the rankings, he did not even do well. Um, but I wanted to keep it consistent because JSN, Bijan Robinson, and Tyler Warren were all born in 2002. And so I think next year is the year for the 2002 players.
Wow, deep dive on ages there. Okay, so you're looking at getting these young players. Tyler Warren, very well could be a top three pick. We'll see what happens in the offseason if it looks like Indianapolis is going to start moving forward with their passing game somehow and maybe drops off one of the guys like Alec Pierce. But the easy tight end one next year is Trey McBride. I mean, look at how he finished this year, just way ahead of all of the others. And then my 2 and 3 picks would be George Kittle and Brock Bowers, which brings us to quarterback. Sarah, do you have a quarterback pick?
Yeah, Drake May, baby.
Drake May. All right, Drake May is my number 2 quarterback if we had to draft right now, which just shows the quarterback is wide open. My number 1 is still Josh Allen. You can still expect him to finish number 1 overall. Number 3, I don't even know. Who I put down right now is Trevor Lawrence. I think he'll continue his top run at the end of the year and continue to air the ball out while getting rushing touchdowns and be the number 3 quarterback next year. All right, that's it. I'm going to stop sharing now to bring us to the conclusion of the pod with, something I've been wanting to do for a while. Now I have stats in a spreadsheet of all of our finishes over the whole, since the inauguration of the year of the league, I should say 9 years ago, back in 2017, up until now. I created a simple formula, so taking feedback for improvements, to make up our league power rankings of all the years. This is how I did it. I took the league finish each year, whatever spot you finished in the league, divided it by the total number of teams in the league for that year, summed up that number for every year that you've been in the league, and then divided by your years in the league, and then multiplied by 100 just so that it's not a decimal number. Yes, do we have a question?
Yes. So, okay, besides Brandon and I, who were new additions 3 years ago, and I guess Daniel joined later, have there been other fantasy managers who have come and gone from the league?
There have been many fantasy managers who have come and gone. We don't talk about them. The lost souls. They are not included in my spreadsheet. We have one fantasy manager, the infamous FFD Gen, who did win the championship in the second year of the league, 2018. Otherwise, all the league champions are still among us here. But FFD Gen is probably the most well-known. If you remember, if you know, you know. For our inaugural league mates, back in the start of the first ever league in 2017, we had a league size of 10, and we had just myself, Eddie, Nick, Scott, Christine, and Aaron around there. But we've had a whole bunch who have come and gone. I have not included them in the stats, but maybe I will. Maybe I should expand my records out to include them.
I'll ask you later.
But our top, for the last 3 years now, we've had the exact same league. And in fact, even 2 years before that, before we expanded from 12 to 14, we had the same 12 for the 2 years before. So everybody in the league now has been basically playing for 5 years consistently, alongside then you and Brandon, who came on the past 3 years. And so hopefully that formula makes sense. What that means is that a top finish in one of the years where we had expanded to 14 teams is going to be valued higher than a top finish back when we were a 10-team league. That's what my weighting tried to do. But yes, feel free to ask questions on the rating. All I'm going to tell you is the finish. Using that ranking, statistically just done, calculated in Excel, lower numbers are better. So for example, if you were to finish first overall in a 14-team league every year, then your score would be 1 divided by 14. 1 divided by 14 is 0.07. So multiply that by 100. If you did that every year, your score would be 7. So theoretically, 7 is the top possible score if you are only Brandon or Sarah. So if Brandon or Sarah had finished first each of their 3 years, they would have a score of 7. That is how that works. So smaller numbers are better. We'll start at the bottom with our largest number, our 14th place in terms of our official league power rankings, and that is Jason right now with a large score. Just to give you a spread, the largest score of our last place is 72, and our first place score is 35. That is the differential here. The overall numbers themselves don't mean much, so I'm not going to say the numbers anymore. I'm just going to go from last up to first. So last place right now in the official league rankings is Jason. Jason, time to step it up for next year. 13th place is Mike. Close, just ahead of Mike at 12th is Christine. Then we have a little bit of a jump to Sean in 11th and Daniel in 10th. 9th in league power rankings. That is where you currently sit, Sarah. Just behind Brent at 8th. Just behind Scott in 7th. The top 6 brings us Aaron, 6th overall in the league power rankings. Cassie sits 5th overall in the league power rankings. I told you, the 14th place finish really hurt her this year, but she had been very strong with her finishes since coming into the league. Otherwise, 4th place overall is Nick in terms of our league power rankings. And then the top 3, a big jump ahead of the 4th. First, 3rd place, we have Brandon, who's had 3 strong finishes to start his year, all in the 14-team league. 2nd place with 35.7 points in this arbitrary ranking system is Eddie, which means that I am our official league power rankings leader with a score of 35.4, just barely ahead of Eddie. If you want any clarification on that point system, feel free to let me know. That is how we officially stand, and this will be now a running tally moving forward. And that is it. The season is over. Season 9 of Football the League and Season 4 of Football the Pod has come to an end. I hope you all had as much fun as I did this year. In fact, more fun than me, because that's what matters. Don't forget, there's always room for improvement. Send me those league rule change recommendations and pod recommendations. And hey, if you have any leads on sponsors, I'm taking calls. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on and doing this again this year. You've been a fantastic guest. Any final words?
That was a lot of explaining and math right there. You got to simplify it next time. But thanks for having me.
Pretty straightforward. It's the power rankings that matter.
All
All that matters is that
You
the math
just wanted
says.
another opportunity to toot your own horn.
I did not expect myself to finish first, considering that Eddie has 3 championships and I only have 2. But if anybody wants to see my numbers, I will share the spreadsheet with whoever is interested. Thanks, everybody, for sticking with it every week, both the league and the pod. I hope to see all of you back for a 10th season next year, which will start before you know it. Draft season is only 8 months away. I am already excited. Have a great start to your year. Enjoy the off season with whatever you do with yourself in these desolate fantasy football-less void months. And thank you for listening, my friends. See you in season 5.